The Timberwolves recently acquired Rudy Gobert, and in my opinion, this is a very weird trade. Minnesota would now be adding a phenomenal defender in Rudy to an already very talented roster consisting of guys like Anthony Edwards, D'Angelo Russell, and Karl Anthony Towns. But quickly before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm Juicy Sports, I make opinionative NBA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, hit that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. I also want to quickly mention that I recently started up an MMA channel, and if you guys are interested in that, the link will be in the description. But anyways, let's get into it. Although this free agency class hasn't necessarily been the most stacked we've seen in some time, it has been a very good free agency overall, I would say. We've seen a bunch of trades like DeJounte Murray going to Atlanta, we saw Kevin Durant requesting a trade recently, and now of course we saw Rudy Gobert get traded to the Timberwolves, which isn't necessarily something anybody saw coming. But before we break down the fit of Rudy in Minnesota, let's first look at the trade details. So the Timberwolves of course got Rudy Gobert, and the Jazz got Malik Beasley, Patrick Beverley, Jared Vanderbilt, and 2 other filler players, in addition to 4 first-round picks, 3 of them being unprotected, which is an absolute haul for Rudy Gobert. Now, regardless of the fit of Rudy in Minnesota, I still think that the Jazz certainly won this deal and won it by a decent margin as well. Getting 3 unprotected first-round picks and an additional protected first-round pick for a guy in Rudy who of course is a phenomenal defender and definitely one of the best defenders in the NBA, but the fact that he's somewhat limited offensively and you got that much draft capital in return is definitely an amazing trade for the Utah Jazz, at least in my opinion. But of course, if Rudy goes into Minnesota and turns out to be a very valuable player for them and they make the playoffs and make noise in the playoffs, then this trade still could potentially be worth it. But now, how does Rudy actually fit in with the Minnesota Timberwolves? Now, it's pretty obvious what the Timberwolves front office was thinking when they made this deal. They just wanted to bring in a phenomenal defender like Rudy to really help this Timberwolves team who did struggle a little bit defensively, but offensively they were a phenomenal team. And if you look at it just from that perspective, I definitely think this move does make sense, as Rudy will most certainly make the Timberwolves a much better defensive team than they were in the past, and when you consider how good they were offensively, now you're probably talking about a pretty good team in the Western Conference. But I just don't personally know how Rudy is going to fit in with this roster, considering they already have Karl Anthony Towns, and although Karl can definitely play power forward and he could do so at a very high level, I just don't personally love playing big in 2022, especially considering that all the teams, or most of the teams that the Timberwolves will be playing, at least most of the good teams, are going to have 4 wings out there. And if Cat has to guard a wing, it's just going to make it so much more difficult for him, especially considering he wasn't even necessarily a great defender guarding big men. And although it's certainly very nice that the Timberwolves got a big upgrade defensively at that center position in Rudy, there's also some issues that would arise offensively as well, as now Karl Anthony Towns can't necessarily be as effective in the paint anymore, because Rudy of course is only going to be in the paint, and whoever's guarding him could easily just double Karl and just make his life a lot harder from there. So now Towns is going to need to be a more perimeter oriented player, which of course he definitely has the capability to do so, but part of what makes Karl Anthony Towns great is the fact that he can score from anywhere. Now, another potential issue is Rudy and all centers that play like him have proven the inability to be all that effective late in playoff games when the opposing team consistently runs pick and rolls and gets Rudy on a point guard or a shooting guard. Now, of course, I'm not bashing Rudy whatsoever. This obviously makes sense, and any other center who plays a similar skill set to Rudy would have this exact same issue at struggling to guard point guards and shooting guards consistently. And if that were to be the case, especially late in playoff games, the Timberwolves might even need to pull him out of the game when you consider that he also doesn't necessarily provide all that much offensively. So if he's not providing all that much offensively and he's somewhat struggling defensively, you kind of have to take him out of the game at that point. And considering they gave up 3 unprotected first round picks and an additional first round pick for this guy, if he's not even able to play late in playoff games for you, then that's obviously a huge negative. Now, this definitely was a bigger issue for Rudy a couple years ago, and he definitely improved upon it, I would say, but at the same time, it still is an issue. And when teams are playing small out there and maybe running a 5 out, it's just going to be difficult for Rudy to guard that player on the perimeter while at the same time guarding and protecting the paint. But although I definitely do think this is somewhat of an odd fit for Rudy in Minnesota, I do still at the same time think there are still positives to this move, as of course the Timberwolves did struggle defensively, as I mentioned before, and Rudy would definitely improve that. But also there are certain scenarios where the Timberwolves could definitely mismatch Karl-Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert's minutes, where both of those guys would be able to feel comfortable out there, and Towns would now be able to have his full arsenal while playing at center, while Rudy could also have the paint to himself and run the pick and roll effectively, due to the fact that the 4 other players on that specific lineup could potentially be shooters. And at that point as well, if Rudy or even Karl-Anthony Towns is playing with the second unit, they probably would do very well against any opposing team that they are playing. Now, of course, I'm not saying you have either one of these guys coming off your bench. I'm just saying for certain lineups throughout the game, they will be playing against second unit guys. So if that were to be the case, they would probably be dominating. But overall, if Rudy comes into Minnesota and turns them into a very good defensive team, all these negatives that I mentioned about Rudy's fit in Minnesota in this video kind of go out the window, because if the Timberwolves are now a very good defensive team alongside with the great offense that they were showing last year with all the talent that they do have in this roster, now you're talking about a very, very good team, and certainly a playoff team, and even a playoff team that has a potential to make a lot of noise in the playoffs. So if that were to be the case, obviously this trade would be worth it at that point, and all these things that I did mention would kind of be meaningless. But I guess only time will tell what does end up happening with this move. Maybe Rudy would be a phenomenal fit in Minnesota and completely turn them around defensively, and all those people, including myself, that did question this move and didn't necessarily think it was a good move for the Timberwolves would of course be wrong. But one thing that I also want to mention is I think the pick and roll between D'Angelo Russell and Rudy Gobert could potentially be very effective, considering that Rudy has always been a really good pick and lob kind of player, but also when you consider that D'Lo is actually a very, very good passer that could potentially be very effective for the Timberwolves. And even Anthony Edwards could run a pretty effective pick and roll with Rudy Gobert as well, as Edwards has certainly proven the ability to hit that mid-range or 3-point jump shot. So I definitely am very excited to see what the Timberwolves are able to do next season, as they definitely are an extremely talented team. They just need to put everything together and perform once it comes down to the playoffs, assuming that they do make it. And after the addition of Rudy Gobert, I would definitely expect them to make the playoffs this year. So I guess we'll see what happens next season. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think the addition of Rudy Gobert was a good trade for the Timberwolves, or do you agree with me and think it wasn't necessarily an amazing fit for Rudy and the Timberwolves? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, check one of these 2 videos popping up now, and until the next time, peace out guys.